Seems like we never quite know these days what the weather's going to be. Is it going to be hot, you want something light and summerish, or is it going to be colder and you want something more on the winter line? So what I have for you today is lentil soup. It falls more in the winter, but this time of year that's probably going to work out just fine. Now lentils are a dried bean, and what you see here are three different kinds that are available in the U.S. with a fair amount of ease. The first one is the most common one. You can get this at almost any supermarket. It's a brown lentil, or sometimes called a green lentil, and they run about 49 cents a pound. They hold their shape extremely well. Once they're cooked, they work very well in salads and things where you actually want to see that you have a lentil. Casseroles, they work fine in too. This next one is actually called a red lentil, but unless you're colorblind, this is orange and it looks just like OSU orange to someone like me. So that's what I'm going to call it, but when you look for it, ask for a red lentil. Notice how much smaller they are. They cook up much faster, where the brown lentil will take 35 minutes or longer to cook. These will cook down in 20 minutes, and so there's a big difference in time. They also cook much softer, and so if you want something where shape is not important but color is, then this is the one of choice. The last one we have here is a little bit more unusual and a little bit harder to find. The red lentil, orange lentil, again, is hard to find, $1.79 a pound, and only in specialty shops or mail order. This one's also going to be found primarily in specialty shops. It's a French green lentil, and it's sort of in between in both cooking time and how well it holds its shape, but it does hold its shape fairly well, and so is good for products where that becomes important, again, like a salad. With the soup, this one's a little bit unusual in that it is sautéing the lentils. Now this is something that normally you don't see. I've got a big pot. I'm going to add 1 to 1.5 tablespoons of olive oil. If you're interested in cutting fat, you can cut it a little bit more. I've got a cup or about half of a medium onion chopped up. Now this fineness that you chop here, the amount, very imprecise. It's up to you. It's a soup. So that if you have 2 carrots and you want to use them up, use 2 carrots and have a little bit more. This took about 1.5 carrots, and we'll have carrot sticks on the side sometime soon. To that also, I'm adding a couple of cloves of garlic that have been diced. You could chop them up even more, or you could put them through a press if you chose to do that. I've got about 1/4 of a cup of fresh parsley. And fresh parsley is nice because this is going to cook down during the process, and I'd like it to have some left over to use as a garnish. So in lots of cases, I'll substitute a dried parsley for convenience, but here this works real well because we're going to want some more later on. I'm also adding about 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt and about 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper and a teaspoon of fresh thyme if you've got it, or 1/2 teaspoon of dried. And this is going to depend totally on the time of year, what's available. If you've got your herb garden growing, by all means, go for the fresh. If it's in the wintertime and you don't have a window box garden, then the dried is by far the most economical approach. Now to that, I'm adding 2 cups of lentils. One of the things you need to do with lentils, as with all beans, is to pick through them very carefully. And this is the most tedious part of this entire recipe, to be honest with you. Looking through, particularly when you're looking at the red lentils, the orange lentils, which are so tiny, to pick through to see if there's any stones, to get out the broken ones, just to make sure that you don't have bits of other things in there. They're often grown in a field, obviously, and so there'll be other pieces of different kinds of grass, seed. You may find rice, depending on where they've been processed. And some of those things are not a problem. Stones are. And when you're looking for them, make sure you're looking for very tiny pieces of stone, because it's very unlikely that you'll find a great big rock. That would be obvious and would be filtered out. But tiny pieces of stone can break a tooth, and you want to make sure you get those out if at all possible. This is going to simmer for about 10 minutes, 10 to 15. Now we want it on a fairly low heat, and you're going to have to stir it fairly often because you do not want it to scorch. So make sure you stir it often, and if you begin to see signs of scorching on the bottom, which is going to show up the best with the lighter colored lentils, then it's time to go ahead and add the liquid to that. Once you've got this simmered a little bit, you've softened the vegetables just a bit, we're going to go ahead and add about 2 cups of chopped tomato. Now this just comes right out of the can. Just get the diced variety and you're ready to go. Now, normally when you're cooking beans, you want to add anything acid very close to the end, because the acid in the beans or the acid in the ingredient like a tomato or vinegar will prevent the beans from softening. But lentils are something that's a little bit kinder, and you can go ahead and do some things because they don't require a pre-soak. They cook much faster, and you don't have to worry about some of that stuff with these. Now, I've added also 3 cups of chicken broth or chicken stock, homemade if you have it. Otherwise, just use the can. If you use the cans, you'll have a little bit more than 3 cups, but go ahead and use it all. You'll just be a little bit more liquid, and you can leave the top off and evaporate it. If you need more liquid later on, don't feel you need to open more stock. Just go ahead and add a little bit of water to it. In fact, this recipe was originally modified from using plain water to using vegetable stock. So if you're vegetarian and you want to do this, you could in fact go back the other way. Now, this is going to simmer with the lid on at a low temperature for about 25 minutes. And then at that point, you're going to come in and add about 2 tablespoons of vinegar. Now, remember, we're going to add as much of that type of ingredient towards the end as we can, so that that's going to cook in and help prevent it from softening quite as much as it might if we added it, or help it soften earlier on, so that we don't get the beans staying too firm too long. What you get when you're done, this one is the one that's made with the orange lentils, and you can see the great color. This is a complete meal when you're ready here, with a little bit of crusty bread, a glass of milk, and maybe a salad, or even a piece of fresh fruit, and you're ready to go. This is springtime, cool weather dining at its best. For Oklahoma Gardening, this is Barbara Brown.